May 2nd, 1945. The shattered gardens of the Reich Chancellery, Berlin. Dust hangs thick in the air like a shroud, choking the breath from your lungs. A Red Army private, Ivan Koloff, wipes sweat and grime from his eyes, his PP-41 submachine gun still hot from the night's frenzy. The ground trembles faintly, not from artillery anymore, but from the distant rumble of collapsing buildings. Around him, comrades advance in ragged lines, boots crunching over broken marble and twisted rebar. The acrid smell of cordite mixes with the rot of unburied bodies. Suddenly, a shadow looms, the entrance to something unnatural, a steel door blasted ajar, leading down into darkness. Koloff hesitates, heart slamming against his ribs. What hellish secret waits below? The Red Army's push into Berlin had been a maelstrom of fire and fury. Marshal Georgy Zhukov, the iron-fisted commander of the First Belarusian Front, had unleashed over 2 million men, 6,000 tanks, and 41,000 artillery pieces on April 16th, shattering the German defences at Seelow Heights. The Heights, a muddy escarpment 90 kilometres east of the capital, were a slaughterhouse. German Panzerfausts ripped through T-34 hulls, turning them into flaming coffins. Soviet sappers crawled under machine gun fire to clear minefields, their screams lost in the roar of Katyusha rockets. Zhukov, pacing in his command post, a hastily dug bunker in the Reitwein Spur, barked orders through a field telephone, his voice gravelly with exhaustion. Press on. No mercy for the fascist beast. By April 19th, the line broke, but at a cost. 30,000 Soviet dead in 3 days, bodies piled like cordwood. As the noose tightened around Berlin, the city became a labyrinth of death. You can almost hear the whine of Stuka dive bombers in their final, desperate sorties, or the thud of 203mm howitzers pulverizing entire blocks. Streets like Unter den Linden, once grand avenues of Prussian pride, were now kill zones. German Volkssturm, old men and boys armed with antiquated rifles, fought from basements and attics, their fanaticism fueled by Goebbels' propaganda. Soviet infantrymen, hardened from Stalingrad and Kursk, cleared them room by room with grenades and flamethrowers. Sergeant Anya Petrova, a medic with the 8th Guards Army under General Vasily Chuikov, bandaged wounds amid the chaos, her hands steady despite the terror. "The Germans fight like cornered rats," she whispered to a wounded comrade. "But we are the wolves." By April 25th, the encirclement was complete. Zhukov's forces linked with Marshal Ivan Konyev's First Ukrainian Front at Ketsin, sealing Berlin's fate. Inside the city, the fighting intensified. The Spree River ran red, bridges blown to slow the advance. Tiger tanks, their massive 88mm guns barking defiance, ambushed columns in narrow alleys. But the Soviets adapted. IS-2 heavy tanks, their 122mm cannons thundering, blasted through barricades. Colonel Fedor Zinchenko's 150th Rifle Division pushed toward the Tiergarten, where monstrous structures rose like ancient monoliths, the Flak Towers. These behemoths, Flakturm I at the Berlin Zoo, Flakturm II in Friedrichshain, and Flakturm III in Humboldt-Thane, were engineering marvels of concrete and steel. Towering 39 meters high, with walls 3.5 meters thick, they housed 128mm anti-aircraft guns that now turned earthward, shredding advancing troops. Inside, up to 30,000 civilians huddled in terror, the towers serving as impromptu hospitals and shelters. Soviet artillery hammered them relentlessly, but the shells barely scratched the surface. "Like firing peas at a mountain," one gunner muttered. The Zoo Tower, defended by remnants of the 11th SS Nordland Division, Scandinavian volunteers sworn to the Führer, held out, its guns reaping a harvest of IS tanks in the streets below. Zhukov, monitoring from his forward HQ, received reports of these impregnable fortresses. His face, scarred from years of war, tightened. "Take them at any cost," he ordered. Assault teams scaled the walls under withering fire, lobbing satchel charges into gun embrasures. On April 30th, as Hitler cowered in his lair, the Zoo Tower's garrison surrendered, their ammunition spent. Soviet troops poured in, eyes widening at the vast interiors, layered platforms, echoing chambers stocked with medical supplies, food rations, and even art treasures looted from across Europe. The scale was staggering, a city within a city, buried in plain sight. But the true prize lay deeper in the government district. As May 1st dawned, Chuikov's men stormed the Reichstag, raising the red banner amid a hail of bullets. Casualties mounted, over 80,000 Soviet killed or wounded in the battle's final phase. General Helmuth Weidling, Berlin's last commandant, capitulated at 0600 on May 2nd, his voice breaking over the radio. Unconditional surrender. Zhukov, ever the strategist, accepted with a nod, but his mind was on the ruins ahead. Koloff and his squad, part of the mop-up, approached the Chancellery gardens. Shell craters pocked the earth, and the air reeked of gasoline and charred flesh. They found burned remains, later identified as Hitler and Eva Braun, in a shallow pit. But the real enigma was underground. A reinforced door, warped by explosions, beckoned. Descending the stairs, flashlights piercing the gloom, they entered a world untouched by the apocalypse above. Corridors stretched endlessly, lined with ventilation shafts humming faintly. Rooms branched off, offices with polished desks, a map room scattered with pins marking phantom armies. The soldiers froze. Luxuries amid ruin, fine china, bottles of French wine, framed paintings of Prussian kings. "Comrades," Koloff whispered, voice echoing, "what is this place?" The vastness unfolded before them, a labyrinth of engineering prowess that defied the devastation outside. But as they ventured deeper, a chilling silence settled. Empty halls, abandoned posts. Where were the leaders? What secrets did these walls hold? And then, a faint sound, a drip of water, or was it footsteps? The men raised their weapons, hearts racing. The Reich's heart still beat, faint but defiant. The flashlight beams sliced through the stale air like knives, catching motes of dust that dance in slow, lazy spirals. Private Ivan Koloff leads the way down the concrete stairs, each step echoing louder than the last. The walls press in, thick, damp reinforced concrete, cool to the touch even in May. Behind him, his squad follows in single file, Sergeant Mikhailov, rifle slung low, Private Kuznetsov clutching a grenade as if it were a talisman, and the others, young faces smeared with soot and disbelief. The smell hits first. Not cordite or blood, not anymore. Something sweeter, almost cloying, polished wood, old cigar smoke, faint traces of perfume that have no place in a war zone. You can almost taste the luxury on your tongue, sharp and wrong. They reach the bottom. A long corridor stretches before them, lit faintly by emergency bulbs still burning on backup power. Doors line both sides, heavy steel ones with German lettering etched in precise Gothic script. Koloff pushes the first one open. A conference room. A massive oak table dominates the space, maps pinned across its surface like the skin of a defeated animal. Arrows pointing nowhere now, red lines bleeding into nothing. Pins mark phantom divisions that no longer exist. Chairs stand neatly pushed in, as if everyone had simply stepped out for a moment. "Look at this," Kuznetsov whispers, voice cracking. He points to a portrait on the wall, Frederick the Great, stern and powdered, staring down at the invaders with imperial disdain. The frame is gilded, untouched by the chaos above. Further down the corridor, they find Hitler's private quarters. The door is ajar. Inside, the room is small, claustrophobic, really, yet everything in it screams excess. A wide bed with crisp white sheets, rumpled only on one side. A sofa nearby, stained dark brown in places. Blood. Dried now, but unmistakable. The smell of gasoline lingers faintly, carried up from the garden above where the bodies had been burned. Koloff steps inside, boots scraping on the carpet. A small table holds a silver tea service, cups still half full. On the wall, another portrait, Hitler himself, in better days. The soldiers stare. No one speaks for a long moment. This is the lair of the man who sent millions to die, who promised a 1,000-year empire. And here it ends, in damp concrete, with half-eaten rations and a suicide pistol on the desk. Like a rat's hole, Mikhailov mutters finally, but there's no triumph in it. Only exhaustion. The man who had ordered Stalingrad razed, who had starved Leningrad, who had unleashed hell on the motherland. This is where he hid. Not on a battlefield. Not in glory. In a hole. They move deeper. The complex unfolds like a buried city. Ventilation ducks hum softly overhead, pumping air that still smells faintly of machine oil and tobacco. A generator room thrums with life. Diesel engines, switchboards, telephones that once connected to armies now silent. A telephone exchange, rows of operators' chairs empty. Wires dangle like severed veins. Then the luxury truly reveals itself. A dining area with fine china stacked neatly, porcelain from Meissen, crystal glasses catching the dim light. Bottles of French cognac, unopened. Boxes of cigars, still sealed. A small kitchen, stocked with condelicacies from occupied France, tins of caviar, chocolate. Amid the apocalypse above, this underground palace had been fed and watered, heated and cooled, while Berlin burned. The soldiers wander, touching nothing at first. Then someone, Kuznetsov, picks up a bottle of wine, turns it in his hands. "They lived like kings down here," he says, voice thick, "while we froze in the trenches, while our mothers starved." Koloff feels something shift inside him. Not rage. Not anymore. Something colder. Pity, perhaps. Or contempt. The engineering is impressive. 4-meter-thick roofs, independent water supply, air filtration that kept the poison of the surface at bay. A marvel of German precision. Yet it had saved nothing. The Führer had sat here, poring over maps, issuing orders to ghosts, while his empire crumbled above. Word spreads quickly. More troops file in, officers now, their faces hardening as they take in scale. The Führerbunker above, another level entirely, holds the remains of Goebbels' family, 6 children poisoned in their beds, faces marked by cyanide. The discovery comes later that day, May 3rd. The bodies are found, partially burned in the garden like the others. The propaganda minister, architect of so many lies, had chosen silence in the end. Marshal Zhukov arrives on May 2nd, striding through the shattered Chancellery gardens with his staff. He descends briefly, eyes sweeping the corridors. No grand speeches, no triumphant gestures. He sees the bloodstains, the abandoned luxury, the empty halls. According to those who accompanied him, he says little. But his face, scarred, unyielding, tightens. Here was the end of the beast that had cost the Soviet Union 27 million lives. Not in battle. In cowardice. He emerges into daylight, the ruined city stretching around him. The engineering feats below are impressive, yes. Vast. Clever. But they echo with emptiness. The halls are silent now, save for the drip of groundwater, the faint hum of dying generators. The Reich's final fortress had held against bombs, against artillery, but not against its own collapse. Yet something still nags at the soldiers. The bodies are identified. Dental records confirm it later, but questions linger in the smoke. Where are the last high officials? Why does the silence feel so complete? As night falls on the ruined capital, Koloff stands at the entrance once more, staring up at the sky. Victory is here, but it tastes of ash. The deeper they go, the more the silence presses against their ears. Flashlight beams bounce off pale grey walls, revealing faint cracks where groundwater seeps through, slow, relentless, like tears the bunker refuses to shed. Private Koloff pauses at the entrance to what must have been the conference room. The massive table is still there, scarred by cigarette burns and littered with crumpled papers. Maps of a Europe that no longer exists lie half unrolled, their edges curling like dying leaves. Red arrows point toward imaginary victories. Blue lines mark retreats that ended in fire. One soldier, young, barely 20, picks up a document. His fingers tremble as he reads aloud in halting German. Orders, frantic, dated April 28th. Hold the line at all costs. The words hang in the damp air. No one laughs. The irony is too heavy. They find the wine cellar next. Shelves line the narrow passage, bottles of Bordeaux and champagne still corked, dust undisturbed. Someone had planned to celebrate here, perhaps the final victory, perhaps nothing at all. Kuznetsov reaches for a bottle, then stops. "This is what they drank while Leningrad ate wallpaper paste," he says quietly. The words land like a slap. No one takes the wine. Blood tells its own story. In Hitler's sitting room, the sofa bears a dark stain, 2, actually, spread across the armrest and cushion. The smell is faint now, metallic and old. Soviet medics kneel, examining the pattern. "He sat here," one mutters. "Shot himself." She beside him. The stain on the wall nearby is smaller, spattered, Eva Braun's blood as her body slumped. The soldiers stare. This is the end of the man who burned cities and gassed millions. Not a heroic blaze. A quiet room, a pistol, a cyanide capsule. A stain on upholstery. The luxury mocks them. Fine Persian rugs, half-rolled in corners. A silver tea set, cups still on saucers as if afternoon had been interrupted. Framed paintings, Frederick the Great glaring down, oil on canvas, worth more than a soldier's life. Hitler's bedroom is small, almost pitiful. A narrow bed, a nightstand with a portrait of his mother, a few books. Yet even here, the furniture is Chancellery grade, polished oak, carved details. The contrast is sickening. Above ground, Berlin is rubble. Below, this, a tomb dressed as a palace. On May 3rd, they find the children. In the Führerbunker above, 6 small bodies lie in their beds. Goebbels' children, Helga, Hildegard, Helmut, Haldane, Hedwig, Heidrun. Faces peaceful, almost sleeping, but the telltale blue around the lips betrays cyanide. Magda Goebbels had dressed them in their nightclothes, combed their hair, then poisoned them one by one. The soldiers stand frozen. A medic touches the eldest girl's cheek, cold, waxy. They were just children, Koloff whispers. The words break something in the room. Rifles lower. Someone turns away, shoulders shaking. Marshal Zhukov returns on May 4th. He walks the corridors slowly, flanked by aides. No fanfare. He pauses in the map room, fingers tracing the last red lines that never moved. In the antechamber, he sees the bloodstains, the abandoned chairs. Reports say he spoke little, but those close enough heard him murmur, so this is how the great warrior ends. Not anger, not triumph, a quiet disgust. The engineering still impresses, even now. 4-meter-thick concrete roof. Independent generators humming faintly. Enough power to run lights, pumps, ventilation. A telephone switchboard silent forever. Water from its own well. Air filtered against gas. A fortress against the world. Yet it failed to protect the man who built it from himself. As the soldiers catalogue what they find, papers, medals, a looted safe cracked open, questions swirl. Where are the missing? Bormann. The last fanatics? Rumors spread through the ranks. Some escaped through tunnels, others died in the garden. The bodies in the shallow crater outside, charred, barely recognizable, have been examined. Dental records will confirm it later. But in this moment, doubt lingers like smoke. Koloff steps outside at dusk. The sky above Berlin is the color of bruised steel. Fires still burn in the distance. He looks back at the entrance, a dark moor in the earth, and feels the weight of it all. Victory is won. The beast is dead. Yet the halls below echo with absence. Vast, engineered, empty. The final act of the crumbling empire is not a battle. It is silence. May 5th, 1945. Mid-morning. The garden above the Führerbunker. What remains of it? Smoke still curls from blackened craters. Private Koloff stands guard at the entrance, the steel door now propped open like a broken jaw. His squad has been relieved, but he lingers. The smell of charred flesh has faded, replaced by wet earth and diesel. Soviet engineers move in now, measuring, sketching, preparing reports for Moscow. The complex is being catalogued, not as a trophy, but as evidence. Word has spread through the divisions like a slow shockwave. Comrades from Chuikov's 8th Guards Army file down the stairs in small groups, helmets off, boots scraping. They see what Koloff saw, the endless corridors, the generator room still humming faintly, the map room with its abandoned pins. One lieutenant, a veteran of Kursk, stops in the antechamber and stares at the bloodstained sofa. He doesn't speak. He just nods once, as if confirming something long suspected. The Führer, the man who had screamed for total war, had died quietly here, in a small room with a portrait of Frederick the Great on the wall. The engineering stuns them anew in daylight. 4 meters of reinforced concrete overhead. Independent power, filtered air, a private well. A fortress designed to withstand the end of the world. Yet it had not. The roof held, the wall stood, but the man inside had broken. You can almost feel the irony settle on your skin like damp concrete dust. All this effort, all this expense, 1.35 million Reichsmarks, to shelter one coward. Marshal Zhukov returns one final time on May 8th, the day of the final surrender. He descends without ceremony, his greatcoat brushing the walls. Officers trail him silently. He walks the length of the main corridor, pauses in Hitler's study, fingers the edge of the desk where maps once lay. Reports from the time describe him as quiet, almost contemplative. No speeches, no gestures of triumph. He sees the luxury, the high-quality furniture dragged down from the Chancellery, the framed oils, the crystal that never rang in celebration, and he sees the emptiness. The halls echo with what is gone. 27 million Soviet lives. Cities turned to ash. Mothers who will never see their sons again. And here, the final accounting, a bloodstain, a pistol, silence. He emerges into the ruined garden. The Reichstag flag flies nearby, red against the grey sky. Victory is complete, but it is not joyful. The soldiers who had first entered feel it most keenly. Kuznetsov sits on a broken bench outside, staring at the sky. They built a city under the earth, he says to no one in particular, and it still couldn't save them. Mikhailov, beside him, lights a cigarette with shaking hands. All that concrete, all those machines, and in the end, nothing. The discovery of the Goebbels' children lingers heaviest. 6 small bodies, poisoned by their own mother. The soldiers who found them, hard men who had seen Stalingrad, had wept openly. One sergeant had carried the youngest girl out himself, wrapped in his greatcoat, as if to shield her from the world she never knew. "What kind of victory is this?" he had asked. No one answered. As the days pass, the bunker is stripped. Documents crated for SMERSH. Furniture photographed. The bodies, Hitler's, Braun's, the Goebbels family, examined, identified by dental records, then removed. The complex will be sealed, later dynamited, buried under history. But the memory remains. Koloff is among the last to leave. He climbs the stairs one final time, steps into sunlight that feels foreign after the underground gloom. Berlin lies around him in rubble. Fires still smolder. Civilians emerge from cellars, blinking. The war is over. He looks back at the dark entrance. Vast, impressive, empty. The Reich's final monument is not a palace or a tower. It is a hole in the ground, filled with echoes. From shock at the engineering marvel, to the cold realization of its failure, to this, somber, exhausted victory. The beast is dead. The silence that follows is deafening.